Hello, welcome. So, um, it's a new week, and let me just say that um, something sort of happened or not happened last week on Friday, and as a result, I was really anxious. And on that weekend, um, I was so anxious that it affected my reading a little bit. Now, I was not anxious all the time, but every time something reminded me of the thing that happened or didn't happen um, at my research, um, I became anxious, and so I didn't feel as good as I wanted to be at the time. But this week, as things turned out on Monday, um, the thing that I feared would happen did not actually happen, although the thing that I wanted to happen also did not happen. But at least the thing that I did not want to happen didn't happen, and so I was, I was relieved. I was relieved. Um, my anxiety was eased off, and I would say this week I feel really grateful. Um, and so yeah, I feel quite good this week, and yeah, basically that's just kind of what's going on this week. And so to start off, this week in video, I'm gonna do a tag. Um, and it just so happened that yesterday was Tuesday, and I thought, let's just put this under Tag Tuesday, because why not? It is still Tuesday in some parts of the world as I speak right now, although it's kind of 11:20 p.m. here in Malaysia, so I'm pretty sure that not many parts of the world, are still on Tuesday. But anyway, it's just gonna be nominally Tag Tuesday. But anyway, this is the Booktube About Me Tag, and I was tagged by Just Book Girl TV, Jessica, and I think this tag is gonna be quite simple. Basically, it's about me. So it's gonna be a lot of rambly talks about me, which may or may not be interesting depending on your interest and perspective. But you know what? Let's begin with the tag. So there are 10 prompts. So the first prompt: what do you study? What is your job? Hi, my name is Freddie, and I am a master's student. I'm doing chemistry at a university here in Malaysia. Number 2, what is your favorite social media? I would say Instagram. But at the same time, I'm not so much of a Instagram aesthetics kind of a person. What do I do on Instagram? Usually, I use Instagram to communicate with friends all over the world through DMs. And by friends, I mean bookish friends that I know through the online bookish community, either through Bookstagram or through Booktube. And basically, it has been I would say, an adequate platform for me to perform, the communication with these friends. But other than that, I also do other things on Instagram. I post my thoughts on the books that I've read, typically a bit later after I finish those books, because I tend to get a bit lazy when it comes to social media, to be honest. Sometimes I enjoy just posting stuff on social media, but other times it just feels kind of tiring because it's social media. It's virtual, so I just use social media whenever I feel like it. Now, the third thing that I use Instagram for was, of course, to unwind, and usually that happens in the form of watching reels, and it's sort of a bit like, I guess a bit like TikTok scrolling, except that I find that I'm not able to scroll for too long, otherwise I would get bored. And most of the time I enjoy watching flop top reels on Instagram. If you don't know what flop top is, never mind. You can Google it. So, next prompt. If you had another channel, what would it be about? I would imagine the alternate universe version of me would probably have a, I don't know, day-to-day lifestyle vloggy kind of a channel. I do not foresee myself, this version of me, however, doing that kind of thing, because doing vlogs, as I found out before, requires a lot of effort. And honestly, the effort is not something that I really mind. The editing, I would say I would enjoy those things. The recording would probably be a little bit difficult because I tend to get self-conscious, especially when it comes to recording in a public area. But what I found the most inconvenient when it comes to making videos would be the waiting. And I think it's likely to do with the fact that I'm using a fairly basic computer with fairly limited processing capability, and therefore every time I want to process my video, it would take a long time. I'm talking about more than 1 hour, even more than 2 hours sometimes. And that's the most annoying part. It's the waiting. Splicing up clips together, it's not really a big deal for me. In fact, I will be splicing up different clips at the end of this video for your viewing pleasure. What is it going to be about? Well, it's going to be about random things, but it has something to do with what one of my responses in this prompt. Okay, so next one, number 4. Do you play an instrument? I play the piano, and I also play a bit of guitar, although I would say I don't play the guitar as well as I do the piano. And number 2, I would say that I don't even play the piano that well. And because I don't have access to both the piano and the guitar here, living in KL, I feel like I'm getting a bit rusty. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. But yeah. I have interest in other kinds of instruments, however. I've always been really fascinated by this Chinese instrument called the erhu, which is like a 2-stringed instrument that is that you can play like a violin or something. And I just think that that instrument sounds really beautiful. And it also looks kind of portable. And so it looks cool, and it also looks cute. And really it's just something that I hope maybe in the future I'll be able to try out a bit and learn. Who knows? So, number 5. What hobbies do you have other than reading? I like to cook. Although the problem with cooking is that someone has to eat the stuff that you cook. And I would say that I'm pretty decent of a cook, except that when it comes to stuff like stir-fried noodles, I still don't have any confidence with that, because usually when I make stir-fried noodles, they don't taste as good as the ones that you would find in restaurants. So that's a bit of a bummer. But I like to cook stuff like curries, things that involve a lot of stir frying. I enjoy that. Things that are a bit stew like. In fact, a lot of dishes are kind of stew and soup based, which I think are probably the easiest stuff to do. I like to do Chinese cooking. I like to do Malay cooking. And of course, I would also do things that very much Pidayo style, which typically just involves things like stir frying vegetables and stuff like that. And occasionally cooking stuff in bamboo, although I would say that is really rare. That's like really rare. It's not like every day you get to cook things in bamboo, because you have to cook that on an open fire. But yeah, I like cooking, and I also like to go to the mall. And I would say I'm quite fortunate that I'm living in KL right now, which means that I can go to the mall anytime I want. Well, except after 10 p.m. and before 10 a.m. because those are the times the malls are closed. But the rest of the time, I'm free to go to the mall if I don't have anything else to do. And also in KL, we have plenty of malls. There are so many malls here, and even with the number of malls that we have, you would still occasionally hear about announcements of new malls being built. And in fact, I think there's going to be a new mall to be installed at the base of the Merdeka 118 building, which is probably the tallest building here in Malaysia. It's even taller than Petronas Twin Towers, and there's gonna be a mall there. But yeah, I just like the vibes of malls. I like the air conditioning because I live here. It's hot frequently, so the air conditioning is awesome. and to be honest, usually I don't have like any real destination whenever I go to the mall. It's just to go there and to experience the vibes and the atmosphere of the mall itself. Yeah, and if the mall has a bookstore, that's gonna be a plus. Yep. So next prompt, favorite TV shows. I would say my favorite TV shows are all of them have ended or have been cancelled. I loved Scandal, and sort of similar to that, I also liked watching How to Get Away with Murder, because I like the drama in those series, and I just thought how the drama can be quite over the top sometimes, especially in Scandal, where every episode some characters would always have the opportunity to deliver a long speech or a monologue that is really impassioned and and melodramatic. So I thought that was just really entertaining. Of course, that was already ended. I don't think Scandal was cancelled. It was ended a few years ago. I also enjoyed the Marvel TV series, especially the Netflix ones. Those are already cancelled, and I think there are going to be a reboot of those TV series, and the characters are going to come back. So characters like Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones. Hopefully, Jessica Jones will come back because I really enjoy that. Um, I also really loved watching the Netflix drama called Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, that ran for 3 seasons and then got cancelled because of COVID. Um, and also Sense8, also a Netflix series that got cancelled. I think it was cancelled after only 1 season, but that was great. I just love the epic feel of that drama. Um, so yeah, uh, those are the ones that I could think of right now. Oh, the most recent stuff that I watched, which I really enjoyed, was X-Men '97, which was an animated show, and that one ran for 1 season. And I think new seasons will come sometime in the future. So at least that one is not cancelled yet, as of now, as far as I know. So yeah, now those are my favorite TV shows. Number 7, what got you into reading? Um, I would say um, I don't really consider myself as a bookworm. I don't even know what being a bookworm really entails, because I never really consider myself as this a strong lover of books. I think reading is just sort of being imposed on me, and I just sort of let it, and eventually I just kind of internalize reading into who I am as a person. And I would say it probably came to that because of the fact that when I was a kid, I used to be a very one-dimensional kind of a kid. I wasn't good in a lot of things. I wasn't good in sports. I wasn't good in the arts. I wasn't good in socializing. But what I was good at was studying, and so I was very much an academically leaning kid at the time. And of course, when when you lean more towards the academics and studying, people would sort of would have a set of expectation on who you are, and one of it would be you being a bookish person. I wasn't exactly a bookish person at that time. Um, I just studied. Not that studying was really fun, but that was the only thing that I could do decently. But reading just sort of felt quasi natural at the time, because I was bespectacled, I was kind of nerdy, I was like really quiet, and of course reading fits that image, and so I just read. And I thought, yeah, it felt right. So I read. Until today. I just read stuff until today. And it's just strange for me to tell people that I love reading, because even up till today, I would still find reading to be a very taxing activity. I would get tired quickly after reading for a short time. And that is why I'm the sluggish reader. But I won't, it would be lying to say that I don't enjoy reading also. I mean, there are aspects of reading that I do enjoy. There have been books that I've read that I really enjoy the process of reading. Most of the time I just enjoy finishing the book. Starting and finishing the book. But there have been books that I enjoyed the entire journey of going from beginning to the ending. So it has been a fairly rewarding activity also. And of course, the whole thing about feeling like you're a new person every time you finish a book. That is something that I feel when I do read. Despite the occasional exhaustion that I would have, bouts of exhaustion that I would have whenever I read a book, I feel like I would say I feel renewed every time I finish a book. So um, I suppose that would be like one of the reasons why I continue reading until today. Number 8. What are your favorite and least favorite genres? Um, my favorite genres, I don't have any particular favorite genres because um, I read what I like to read, and usually what I like to read, it hinges upon the way the thing is written. And that means it should have the right tone, the right voice, I wouldn't say the right style. It can be of any style, but it just has to be enjoyable and entertaining and well written based on my personal standard. So it can be anything, honestly. But when it comes to least favorite genre, okay, look, I would probably say that the least likely genre for me to pick up would be self-help. But I also don't have any issue if the self-help book that I, for some reason, end up reading is, if it's well written, then I would still like it. If it fits my taste, I would still like it. The reason why I feel wary about self-help book is that sometimes there is some kind of insincerity that you could feel from self-help books, some kind of narrowness that I just don't feel comfortable with, or occasionally certain self-help books feel like it's trying to impose something on you, and I just don't really like that. I don't like something imposing some kind of idea on me because it feels uncomfortable. And similar to that, another kind of books that I usually won't pick up would be autobiographies of celebrities. And I would say by celebrities, I think I would be more likely to pick up a book by an entertainment celebrity, and not so much by a celebrity whose work, whose trade is in something else, like I don't know, like in tech, for example. Because the kind of vibes that you usually get sometimes is that there will be some kind of sometimes the writing can be self-aggrandizing or self-promoting, and I just don't feel comfortable with those kinds of stuff. In general, I don't feel comfortable reading about something in which the writer tries to make themselves look good. So if that happens, I'm not going to enjoy it. But if the writer tries to make themselves look bad, I would probably enjoy that one. But only if that is written from the perspective of self-awareness. Yeah. 'Cause, yeah, for me, self-awareness is really important in a book. But anyway, moving on to number 9, what books define your childhood? I don't have specific books. I would say there are a few kinds of books or reading materials that define my childhood. The first one would be the Doraemon comics. When I was a kid, I used to read a lot of Doraemon comics. Now, Doraemon is a Japanese cartoon. It's about this blue robotic cat that comes from the future in order to assist a young boy in the present, because the descendant of this young boy is afraid that this young boy is going to screw up his life, and therefore the descendant sends this robotic cat to help him get through life. And this young boy, he's like very playful. He doesn't like to study, but at the same time, he is also characterized as someone who is like really kind and stuff like that. He just doesn't really care so much about the practical things in life, like accomplishing something through studying, for example. So typically in each episode, this robotic cat would produce some kind of gadget for this boy in order to solve some kind of problems that he has in his life. And typically, sometimes hilarity ensues when these gadgets are being abused or misused and stuff like that. And usually the episodes are kind of formulaic like that. I like reading the comics of this cartoon because the artwork tends to be quite simple, and the layout is also quite simple. And I was not a big reader of comics when I was a kid because I tend to struggle a little bit with comic layouts that were a bit more exciting. So here's something that I just kind of want to share regarding the whole thing with comics. When I was a kid, I used to borrow comics from this one particular neighbor. At first, I was just borrowing the Doraemon comics from her. And then after some time, this neighbor also had a series of Dragon Ball comics. But I wasn't really interested in Dragon Ball because I was just not really interested in that franchise as a whole, but at the same time the comics of Dragon Ball, because if you're familiar with Dragon Ball, it is a series that has a lot of fighting, a lot of action, and therefore the comics itself would also have a lot of action lines, a lot of detail, and the layout tend to be a little bit more adventurous, and it was really difficult for me to follow the panels. So originally I just borrowed the Doraemon comics from this neighbor, and then eventually this neighbor would start introducing me to the Dragon Ball comics, and she would lend me the Dragon Ball comics each time as well. So I would take the Doraemon and Dragon Ball comics, one each, home, and then I would only read the Doraemon comics and I did not read the Dragon Ball one. And whenever I finished the Doraemon comics, I would return both. And then the neighbor would think that I actually finished both. And so the neighbor would give me the next installment of both the Doraemon and Dragon Ball comics. And I would, it would repeat like this up until there was no more Doraemon comics to be lent, but only Dragon Ball. But I didn't want to tell the neighbor that I didn't actually read the Dragon Ball comics. So I kept on going to the neighbor's house to borrow a new episode of the Dragon Ball comics, and I would take it home and I would just let it sit for a few days, and then I would go to the neighbor's house and say that I have read it, and then change to a new installment of the Dragon Ball comic. And I was really shy. I didn't want to tell this neighbor that I was not interested in Dragon Ball comic, but I just kept on doing this all the way until I think I reached the end of the comic collection that this neighbor had. So yeah, that was like a really silly thing that happened when I was a kid. Anyway, that was one thing, Doraemon comics. Now another thing that I would say sort of defined me when I was a kid was, believe it or not, I used to read a lot of entertainment and gossip magazines. And I started reading the local entertainment Malay language magazines, which were not owned by me, but rather by older relatives of mine, like my aunt, with whom I'm staying with right now. And I used to devour a lot of gossip magazines back then when I was a kid. And then when I when I became familiar with the English language, I think there was this cutoff point in my life in which, before this point, I was not so much an English speaker, but after this point, I was more comfortable with the English language. I started to read English language entertainment magazine, and so I would say by that time, I was probably like one of the most well-informed kid in the town regarding what's going on, what's the latest trends in pop culture. So, things like the latest releases in music, movies, TV, what's going on, the whole gossip in Hollywood. I was like the most up-to-date person on those things at the time. But then again, the kids in my town, my peers, so to speak, none of them were really that interested in those kinds of things. And so I was still kind of alone with my whole forwardness in pop culture at the time. Okay, so lastly, number 10, tell us an interesting fact about you. When I was a kid, me and the neighborhood kids used to play at an active construction site, because the construction of a flat was going on at that time. And when it's evening and the workers went home, we, the kids, would be playing at that construction site. And on hindsight, I would say that was kind of dangerous. But I had tons of nice experience in at construction sites. And that is why, up until today, construction sites gave me this kind of pleasant feeling. I sort of like the smell of concrete and cements and paint. Not that I go and sniff those things, but I just like the sort of the overall odor of a building in the process of being constructed. And going to the this half constructed building, going into it, it's just an experience. It's kind of fun going to a half made building with all its hazards around. So yeah, I guess that's interesting, perhaps. But anyway, those are all of the prompts for this Booktube About Me tag. And I tag everyone who watched this video, whether you have a Booktube channel or not. If you don't have any Booktube channel, just respond in the comments if you want. But if you do have a Booktube channel and you haven't done this tag, feel free to do this one. And yep, I'm tagging everybody. So that's all for this video. As I said before, I'm going to attach some random clips after this, so yeah, you can watch that if you want. But yeah, until then, take care, thanks for watching, and bye!